Chapter 12:20, A Curtain. God is here to save us. The words spoken in a sob-filled voice echoed at the entrance of Moon City, causing the residents who were waiting to fall into a trance. At the edges of the grayish-white fog, a fire quietly burned. After eating another batch of mushrooms, Klein dispelled the iron-black skewer in his hand and looked up at the crater described by Moon City's high priest, Nim. He then reached out with his right hand and gently pulled, dragging himself out from 15 minutes ago. After exchanging looks, Klein's true form rapidly vanished and entered the fog of history. He ran all the way to a time before the first epoch, and he sat in the old stack cities. His historical projection stood up and snapped his fingers repeatedly, flashing through the crimson flames as he headed for his destination. When the crater that was once a hill was almost right in front of him, he stopped. He cautiously extended his right palm and pulled Kona's Kilgore out of the void. The burly Earl of the Fallen's facial muscles twitched as he quickly transformed into another Jayaman sparrow. He took out a lantern from the fog of history with one hand and rubbed his temples with the other as he muttered softly, "Why does a marionette have to change its appearance? There's no one else here. I can't develop OCD." A few seconds later, the marionette's projection carried a lantern that emitted faint yellow light as it walked towards the crater not far away. As the light flickered, Klein saw his target location and realized that it wasn't too deep. The difference between the bottom and the ground wasn't more than 2 meters. Of course, compared to the original hill, this change was indeed huge. Inside the crater, the soil was smooth, and there were a few rocks in it. There were many twisted, mutated plants around it whose species were difficult to distinguish. It looked no different from other places. After observing for a while, Klein, who had stealthily activated Spirit Body Threads and Spirit Body Threads vision, slowly entered the crater, planning on following his pre-planned route and reassessing everything worth paying attention to. As he walked, he frowned slightly and let out an exclamation. He realized that his thoughts had turned sluggish, but it didn't affect his thinking. It was as if he had slept too much and had just woken up, having a heavy head with insufficiently active thoughts. This was a situation that a person would occasionally experience. Beyonders of the other pathways might not be able to detect it, but as a demigod of the seer pathway, Klein could clearly sense something amiss. If it were any deeper, it would be close to the effect when a mariontist controls spirit body threads. The influence left behind by dark demonic wolf-cotter? That's not right. If he didn't mean to leave it behind, it means that he showed his complete mythical creature form back then. That would have resulted in Moon City's investigation team in breaking down and losing control. If he had intentionally left it behind, what would be the purpose? Telling others that he was here. Klein circled the area in puzzlement, but he didn't discover any anomalies. After some thought, he let his main body that was hiding in the historical void in a time before the first epoch take 4 steps counterclockwise as he recited the incantation and went above the gray fog. He wanted to do a divination. With the exact time and location, Nim's description, and a real-world survey of the area, as well as lighting up some of the historical fragments, he believed that the prerequisite for making a divination had basically been met. This didn't mean it was enough, but that he could barely give it a try. Besides, if the hill turning into a crater incident had something to do with Sephra Castle and him, then the chances of a successful divination would greatly increase. The revelation would be very clear and not be interfered with. Without any further thought, he sat on the fool's high-back chair. He conjured a dark red fountain pen and yellow parchment and wrote, 28th June of June 1349 of the 5th epoch, the anomaly that happened here. He put down the fountain pen and grabbed with his left hand. He pulled out a handful of crater soil from the fog of history to use it as a medium for divination. With one hand holding the soil and the other holding the parchment, he leaned back in his chair and recited the divination statement 7 times. Then, with the help of cogitation, he fell asleep. In the hazy dream world, Klein saw the grayish-white solidified fog. He saw the hill that was tens of meters high and the twisted vegetation around it. A few seconds later, the fog began to churn and rapidly vomited a black shadow. The black shadow was like a huge velvet curtain, madly absorbing all the light around it. Its translucency increased as it completely enveloped the hill. Following that, the hill vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a crater. The strange plants at the edge of the crater were also suddenly covered, and had black illusory spirit body threads that extended towards different parts of the black curtain. The curtain became more and more transparent and illusory until it reached a point where one couldn't see it with the naked eye. If not for the fact that he had spirit body threads vision to observe the reality of the scene, Klein wouldn't have been able to discover that the curtain had covered the crater's surface. The scene flashed, and the dreamscape twisted to reveal a new scene. Moon City's 5-man patrol team approached and discovered that a crater had replaced the hill that had vanished. They stopped in their tracks and left the area without hesitation. They didn't rashly investigate. After an unknown period of time, a gigantic figure suddenly appeared in another direction. It was a demonic wolf covered in dark fur with 8 legs. It was about 4 to 5 meters tall. The demonic wolf had a tuft of short, grayish-white fur on its forehead. Its pure black pupils covered at least 3/4 of the space of its eyes. It was none other than the dark demonic wolf, Cotter. The dark demonic wolf raised his head and opened his mouth, as though he was screaming, but nothing happened. In the next second, a figure appeared in front of him. It was another him. The dark demonic wolf's historical projection did a simple step with his 8 legs, and he instantly arrived beside the crater. After he surveyed the area, he carefully lowered his head and picked up the completely transparent curtain that had made the entire hill disappear. The curtain suddenly came alive as it rapidly contracted and spun. It wrapped around the black demonic wolf as if it was adding half a black translucent piece of clothing to him. The dark demonic wolf trembled slightly, as if it had become a clothed marionette in 2 to 3 seconds. However, this was only a historical void projection. The next breath didn't happen as the main body stopped maintaining the projection. The curtain lost its support as it instantly collapsed and lay spread out on the ground. Dark demonic wolf Cotter didn't give up. He occasionally transformed the monsters around him into marionettes or summoned historical projections, allowing them to go forward again and again, experiencing all kinds of failures. However, in the end, his newest batch of marionettes still managed to pick up and control the curtain. The entire process was silent, as though it was a mime act. Following that, the gigantic demonic wolf made the marionettes bring the curtain to him. At that moment, the grayish-white fog around him churned again, forming a vortex that was comparable to a hill. The vortex emitted an invisible suction force, causing the strange, curtain, and dark demonic wolf Cotter to be thrown towards it at the same time. Such a scene caused a substantial ripple to appear in the dreamscape. Countless points of light appeared, making it difficult for him to see the specific details. When everything returned to normal, dark demonic wolf Cotter draped the transparent curtain around him and rapidly flew away from the solidified fog. And at that moment, the Moon City investigation team arrived and saw the ancient subsidiary god leave. Cotter glanced at them, but he didn't stop, vanishing into the darkness. At this point, the scene shattered and the dream ended. Klein woke up. He sat up straight and tapped the edge of the long mottled table with his fingers as he silently muttered. It's not that there weren't any anomalies before I arrived. More likely it is that the guards from Moon City didn't discover it. After all, the fog extends outwards to an unknown limit. What's that curtain that was spat out by the grayish-white fog? It can cover a hill when it's large, turning it into a crater as though by magic. When it's small, it can be used as clothes by the demonic wolf, turning him into a marionette. It's a little like a high-sequence item of the seer pathway. It was spat out because I entered the world above the gray fog and completed the binding with Sephra Castle. It seems to be able to turn the surrounding vegetation into its marionettes. This gives me a familiar feeling. Yes, there was something wrong with the food laid out in the rooms of the foggy town back then. Spirit body threads were growing out of them, reaching out towards the core of the cathedral. Once they've been eaten, one will instantly evaporate and vanish. Yes, they end up hanging in the cathedral and becoming a marionette. In other words, once one reaches the level of miracle invoker or attendant of mysteries, one can make plants or objects with spirituality grow spirit body threads, so as to turn them into marionettes. Is that curtain the beyonder characteristics of a miracle invoker or attendant of mysteries? Judging from the dark demonic wolf's performance, it might very well be the latter. This is the reason why one attendant of mysteries characteristic has been missing for a long period of time. There were only clues, but no one could find it. Before Sephra Castle had an owner, the grayish-white fog unconsciously attracted the high sequence characteristics of the three pathways across space and accommodated them. What is it trying to do? That suction force is really very strong. It frightened even dark demonic Wolf Cotter. He didn't even stop, only having thoughts of escaping. What was he suspecting? What was he afraid of? After some analysis, there was a look of excitement on his face. If he could successfully hunt down an angel like the dark demonic wolf, it would be an unparalleled harvest. Of course, the dark demonic wolf, who now had the curtain, was much harder to deal with than before. This matter had greatly reduced his confidence in succeeding. As his thoughts raced, he suddenly recalled something. From the timing of these sequence of events, the dark demonic wolf clearly had the curtain by the time he arrived in the northern city ruins, Noise. He turned the entire city into marionettes and created a marionette city. It wasn't to settle down, nor was it to accumulate helpers. It was to prepare the ritual for Attendant of Mysteries.